former top Trump advisor at the White House last week. We'll get into the election fraud stuff that's about to come out. I heard about that from some folks that were at the White House, and now it's in the news. And we'll obviously talk about Comey and the rest of it, but StoneZone.com. Roger, I got dozens of other clips. Suddenly the talking point that's true is that, though, there's another CIA section coup going on. That's what Trump needs to do to head this off at the pass. How exciting is this? I'm very excited.
Alex, I'm glad that you have now been completely and totally borne out. You've been saying this for many, many months. But we saw yesterday something that's equally part of the efforts to destabilize Donald Trump, and that is this outrageous decision by a Clinton-appointed judge to dismiss the indictments against FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. There's a lot here, so let me get into it. But first of all, let's recognize that James Comey and I were charged with the exact same crime, lying to Congress under oath. Yet they staged a 6 a.m. raid at my home with 29 heavily armed FBI agents and a CNN camera in tow, while James Comey was allowed to leisurely turn himself in within 10 days. The judge gagged me immediately, so I couldn't go on InfoWars and tell people the truth about what was happening to me. But there was no gag or limitation on James Comey. He was allowed to say anything, anywhere he wanted.
24 agents didn't raid his house.
Absolutely true. So what this proves yet again is when it comes to the Constitution, the law, the rules, the facts, or the evidence, none of these things matter if you have a left-wing activist judge. Very specifically, the judge in my case specifically prohibited me from arguing that I was selectively prosecuted or that there was a political motivation in my prosecution. But James Comey was not similarly limited. But here's the most important thing. The ruling itself had nothing to do with the merits of the case. It didn't address the question of whether Comey lied under oath to Congress. It didn't address the question of whether Letitia James had a 43-year record of mortgage fraud and that every single mortgage document she ever signed included fraud in order to get her a lower mortgage rate, a tax break, and a lower insurance rate. The judge threw out these charges because she said that Lindsay Halligan, who is the extraordinarily brilliant and very attractive interim U.S. attorney appointed by President Trump, was unconstitutionally and improperly appointed. This is completely and totally wrong. Lindsay Halligan, first of all, the media denigrates her as a beauty queen or as an insurance lawyer. She graduated from college summa cum laude, got her degree 2 years early, got her law degree in record time, top of both her law class and her class. She was a senior partner in one of the most important and largest law firms in Florida, where she headed their civil litigation division. She has more experience in front of juries than, say, Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General. So the denigration of her is outrageous. But more importantly, the ruling, which said yesterday that the court ruled that once the original 120-day period under Section 546 of the law expired, the Attorney General lost the power to appoint an interim U.S. attorney. That's incorrect. But it's interesting because the appointment of Robert Mueller, like the appointment of Jack Smith, was found to be unconstitutional. So once again, similarly, in my case, because Jack Smith had never been confirmed by the U.S. Senate, because there was no law creating the position to which he was appointed, and because there were no funds budgeted, the courts in South Florida found that his appointment was unconstitutional. Well, if that's true, then the appointment of Robert Mueller was similarly unconstitutional because the facts
Sure, so let's cut to the chase. What do we need to do?
When I raised that at trial, the courts refused to honor it, but when they raised it against Lindsay Halligan, it was raised. Here's the point. The law says two very important things. The provision authorizing the Attorney General to appoint Halligan to a 120-day perm is subsection A of the law. Comey argued, and the Clinton judge incorrectly argued that subsection D of that law overrode it. What's the bottom line? The bottom line
big surprise. Another Democrat judge just engaged in judicial tyranny. What's the bottom line? And then what do we do? Is the statute of limitations up to recharge him? Does it get appealed? What do we do? And how does Trump respond to this incredible travesty?
Now, there's several things here that need to be done. Unfortunately, I think it was timed this way. I don't think there is sufficient time to re-indict James Comey. Again, there were never any rulings on the merits of his case, whether he did or did not lie under oath. But the statute of limitations run out. It's very important to note that the previous U.S. attorney, a miscreant named Eric Siebert, was fired over this. Siebert was quietly preparing a grand jury to rule that no charges should be brought against Comey, but Siebert never disclosed that he had a conflict of interest, that his father-in-law, his wife's father, was the godfather to James Comey's daughter. That was revealed right here on the Alex Jones show. So he should have recused himself from the beginning. He was a deep state prosecutor who was planning to give Comey a walk and slow walking this for that specific statute of limitations to run out. So I doubt, unfortunately, whether the first deputy or whether a new interim appointee in the Southern District will have time to recharge Comey on these specific crimes. Letitia James, on the other hand, has a much bigger problem. The judgment yesterday has no impact whatsoever of the facts on her case. The Department of Justice can re-indict her tomorrow. Donald Trump could appoint Lindsay Halligan as a special counsel to do so. There's no double jeopardy because James was never tried. Additional properties can also be charged. You have state prosecutions. You have a potential tax evasion prosecution there. So Big Tish is not in any way out of the woods. Two other very key points here, Alex. One is the fact that the U.S. Senate and the Democrats, this is part of the same CIA operation, the same use of liberal tyranny by left-wing judges to undermine Trump. They basically refused to confirm the appointments of any of Trump's U.S. attorneys across the country. They simply refused to do so. So by tradition, an appointee to be U.S. attorney has to have the acquiescence of the two U.S. senators from that state. It's not a law. It's not a regulation. It's not a legal requirement. It's a tradition of the Senate. Therefore, what the president needs to do is, and this will get tested in court, but I think he wins based on the law, is he should have a cadre of tough prosecutors, and they can rotate in and out of these positions in 120 increments. So, for example, Lindsay Halligan, whose appointment will ultimately be upheld, once her 120 days is over, she hands off the case to a new appointee who's put in the slot for 120 days. At the end of that 120 days, the case gets, if it's still active, gets passed on to the next. I've had Alan Dershowitz and David Schoen, who's probably the single smartest constitutional and criminal defense lawyer in the country, examine this plan, and they both say it is absolutely legal. So that's the way you fix the problem in terms of the prosecutions across the country, where left-wing activist judges are refusing to hold those who are involved in past crimes during Biden and Obama, particularly crimes involving the Russian collusion hoax and the other various January 6 ops, the two phony impeachments, and so on. But the larger question, Alex, the single most important question is, will there be prosecutions in the Southern District of Florida against Comey, Clapper, Brennan, Weissman, Mueller himself, Biden, Susan Rice, and those, including Barack Obama, who pulled off the greatest single dirty trick in American history, the greatest single abuse of power, the Russian collusion hoax. Now, we were all encouraged a couple days ago, when we heard that subpoenas had been issued. But I'm going to be honest with you, Alex, my sources tell me that there is no ongoing operation in the Southern District of Florida, that those subpoenas have not yet been returned, that there is not a grand jury looking at this. If that is true, that is very deeply troubled. They're trying to run out the clock. I love this president. I support him unconditionally, but recognize that this is not about retaliation or revenge. This is about accountability and justice. And if those who pulled off the Russian collusion hoax, those who tried to destroy your life, Alex, those who tried to destroy the life of that great American patriot, General Michael Flynn and his family, those who tried to destroy me, those who tried to destroy President Donald Trump, if they are not held responsible, if legal technicalities are used to give them a walk, Republicans will not turn out in this next midterm election. They will lose faith. I know the president wants justice. I know the president expects justice. I know the president believes his Justice Department is working on this. I spoke to him about it. He is committed to accountability and justice, but whether that will happen really remains to be seen.
Well, that's right. And when we demand stuff, it's to put pressure on people in the Trump administration, not even Trump. He wants them indicted more than anybody. They tried to kill him and put him in prison. But I can tell Trump this, even bigger than affordability in the economy. I talked to the public, and the polls show this too. They want justice. They want vengeance. The public gets all the persecution. And so we absolutely must see that. And we got to start talking about, I don't like to judge people, Pam Bondi, Cash Patel, Bongino, you know, any of them. I think the jury's not out on Blanche. I think he's a Democrat lawyer, just by culture, just, you know, is just a wimp bare minimum. But we must have this because we understand they're going to be back if we don't do this. And they've sworn, Hakeem Jeffries, all of them, when we get back, if you think we were bad before, we're putting you all in prison, including Trump supporters. So we understand that these people are coming for us and coming from our children's genitals they want to cut off. They would open our borders again. And so we understand this is not a normal political cycle. We want justice. We want justice. So at a certain point, whoever's at fault, we don't know. Trump has to remove the attorney general, the FBI director, the deputy director. He has to remove the deputy AG. And we got to start saying who we want in there that'll take action, because the midterms are less than a year away, Roger. So I think if we don't see mass indictments of the deep state that are done right, they dropped the ball on this, I think, on purpose, and all the rest of it. I'm not saying Halligan did, but just the general thing. If we don't see action, I'll say by February, I mean massive action. I'm going to move to D.C. for months and bullhorn the White House every day. I'm invited to the White House, busy, don't go. Invited to Mar-a-Lago because it's just an event. The president comes by and shakes your hand. I love that, but I don't have time for it. But no. I'm going to get the real attention with a high-powered bullhorn outside the White House and outside Mar-a-Lago, because that's where I get the real attention, not to hurt Trump, but to get him to not commit political suicide. Roger.
Alex, I'm in complete and total agreement. When we come back, I'm going to drop a couple truth bombs that people don't know, things that I learned last week when I met with the president and when I was in Washington.
Massive.
In the meantime, I'm going to take some methylene blue so I can get through the next segment.
You're looking good, Roger. We'll be right back. All right, Roger Stone, StoneZone.com. It's amazing. Check it out. We'll be right back. Everything we do is the tip of the spear. You are the tip of the spear when you spread the word, when you pray for us, when you buy products. So listen, we have shortfalls, and they're not even that big, but I understand the economy's totally shot. Our audience is as big as it's ever been, and back when the economy was going and we had an audience this big, we'd be in high cotton and I'd be able to expand. Right now, I'm just trying to stay on air. So I need you to make the decision to go to thealecshowstore.com right now and take advantage of the biggest sale ever. Black Friday came early. That's right. Black Friday has come early. We always launch it the weekend out before Black Friday. Be a little different. Black Friday comes early. Mega sale, the biggest sale ever. Buy one, get one free on all supplements. The Irish Sea Moss, the ultramethylene blue, the Shilajit, the bovine colostrum, and dozens of other amazing products. This is the biggest sale we've ever done. Ends Friday, November 28th. Buy any supplement and get any other supplement for free. Normally it's buy one bottle of Irish sea moss, another bottle of Irish sea moss, or buy one bottle of methylene blue, another bottle. No, this is add any supplement to your cart and get another supplement free. You can mix and match any of our amazing supplements together. Don't miss out. This offer ends Friday, November 28th. Visit thealexstore.com today and fuel your body, mind, and power the info war. Take advantage of this amazing deal while supplies last. And here's another little tidbit that makes this a total loss leader when you use it. If you go to alexjonesapp.com and download the Droid or Apple app for free, that are the top apps, just in the last few months we launched it, folks at Bigley, the Alex Jones channel, the Alex Jones Network, it's the same shopping cart on the app for your desktop or phone. You get an additional 20% off at checkout on top. So everybody should get the app and should definitely use that. But if you want to support us more and get more funds in, then don't use the app and get the additional 20% off. I'm serious. It's like a form of a donation. When I tell you that I need your support, it's absolutely critical. This is the most critical time. Now, growing up, I learned it was important not to kiss and tell, because where we get around with the girls if you didn't. And it's the same thing with politics with Roger Stone, his incredible sources. He doesn't like to brag about his sources directly with the president constantly. But there's times for him to bring it out. So when he says, I've got huge breaking information, I've got some other White House sources. So I was asking him over the weekend, or late last week, I said, have you heard this? And he was like, well, not only have I heard it, I was there. But I don't know how far he wants to go. I mean, I've almost not even really reported on this because I already had the info, but I didn't want it to get blamed on Roger. But I'm guessing what he's about to say. He says he's got a couple things, though. I know one of them, I think. And that's election integrity and what they found. And separately, days after Roger told me this was Thursday or so, when he got back from the White House, now it's starting to break. Oh, this is about to come out. And Trump said, oh, yeah, we got a big investigation. Get ready. He said that yesterday. So we'll hit that in a moment. But Roger, humor me here. I know you got a lot of big stuff going on, but the Podesta plan, the Civil War, undermine the president ahead of a big event, to have all these former CIA section chiefs that have good records and have Fox hosts and Newsmax hosts all start yesterday saying, no, there's elements of the CIA getting ready for a really bad event to be blamed on Trump, and they're undermining the military ahead of that for a coup. We know that's true. We didn't just agree with them. We saw it, and you, not just me, you talked about it. But to have them going, interagency right to the heart of it shows how ripe this is and how dangerous, but also not just for the public, but inside the agencies. To have Trump's people talk about it lets them know we have the jump on them. Can you speak to that? Because, I mean, they're one of the few things they've got left is staging a false flag and trying to cause a civil war. And to me, that's a front burner issue. To me, when I learned this last night, and then I saw it everywhere and knew that it was obviously a talking point being put out, and Waters like, no, Trump CIA gave me this. It was like a breath of fresh air. I felt like 1,000 pounds was off my back. And then I saw everybody else saying it. I'm like, oh my God, this is a major offense. It looks like Trump got some control of the CIA. Now they're exposing their own operation. This is historic, Roger. I don't think I've ever seen this before.
Well, Alex, I think you're exactly right. Let me point out a couple things. One of the very best things the president has done, which really shows that he does understand what they have in mind, is to reassert control and discipline within the U.S. military. Pete Hegseth has done an extraordinary job of revamping the military, getting rid of those globalist generals and other leaders who would not carry out an order from the commander-in-chief, a legal constitutional order. He's done away with the DEI policies that are destroying our military. He's done away with the mandatory vaccination policies that were destroying our military. And
let's be clear, I know I'm interrupting, but all of that has come out in documents. We knew it, but then it came out as a purge. Get good people out because they won't take a poison shot. DEI became the offices of like the Inquisition of who to persecute. They had incredible power, not just in the Pentagon, but in the NSA and CIA. So when you take those out, you're not just kicking some kooks out. They had made them the advisors to HR on who to persecute.
Well, and then in terms of our intelligence agencies, putting John Ratcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard particularly in position has been incredibly crucial in terms of exposing the entire Russian collusion cabal and setting them up for legitimate prosecutions. vitally important. The disclosures coming out of both the CIA and the ODNI, not to mention the fact that Anna Paulina Luna has been pounding away, forcing the deep state to hand over more and more and more evidence regarding the Kennedy assassination, because past is prologue. And that's very important to look at in view of the Thomas Crook situation in Butler, Pennsylvania. But Alex, what disturbs me in the last couple of days is I've seen the upsurge of these attacks on Susie Wiles, the president's chief of staff. Let me just fill in a couple facts here. First of all, the idea that Susie Wiles represented or worked for Pfizer is false. When she was essentially driven from politics briefly by Governor Ron DeSantis, she worked at Mercury, which is a lobbying firm, which she was not a principal or an equity holder. They have 300 clients. That company may represent Pfizer. She never represented Pfizer. She is the one who negotiated the historic alliance between Robert Kennedy and his Maha forces and Donald Trump. Right now, she is the one pushing to get to the bottom of all these election integrity issues. She's brought Kurt Olson, who is an incredibly knowledgeable and capable attorney who works very closely with Kari Lake and knows more about election integrity than anyone in the country, into the White House to work on that. She is the one who's empowered Tulsi Gabbard and her working group to go wherever the evidence leads when it comes to electronic voting machines, mail-in votings, and other aspects of fraud. Who's pushing for the prosecution of the Russian collusion cabal harder than anyone in Donald Trump's circle? Well, that would be Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. So I'm sick of reading that that she was in the World Economic Forum. That's a defamatory lie. Or that she's delaying the childhood vaccination schedule. That's also a lie. RFK himself posted about the fact that in this entire effort to make America back, who's had his back within the president's inner circle? Susie Wiles. I've known her 25 years. Oh, she's a globalist? No. We both worked for Ronald Reagan against George H.W. Bush. We both worked for Jack Kemp against George H.W. Bush. We both worked for Donald Trump against George W. Bush. So what she is a winner. Yes, she's tough. Yes, she is not a public personality, but this idea that she is somehow responsible for everything that people don't like about this administration is nonsense. Now, here's why the deep state is making their move now. I've been in politics a long time. I remember the period in 1982 before President Ronald Reagan's tax cuts and his regulatory cuts took hold and gave us what was, by the end of his term, the single best economy up to that point in our history. We had a lot of panicins, as the president would call them, saying, oh, we got to abandon the Trump plan, the Reagan plan. Reagan has to raise taxes. Reagan has to back off these regulatory. Reagan needs to go softer on the Soviet Union. You remember this, Alex, people telling him, don't call on Gorbachev to pull down that wall. There were many in his administration didn't want the hard line that ultimately resulted in the fall of the Soviet Union. But we stuck to our guns and we turned out to be right. We're in the same position today. President Trump's tax cuts, his regulatory cuts, his tariff deals.
Roger. I mean, getting us out of the carbon taxes alone saves the country. We're close to a peace deal in Russia. I get this. Our listeners are sophisticated. I know you do big shows everywhere, CNN, everything. My point is that we get all that. We want the deep state prosecuted because we know they're like a disease that keeps coming back. We understand that. I am simply saying it is heartening to see Trump, through his surrogates, come out and say this is a CIA coup and get ahead of it instead of just fighting the lies they put out with Crossfire Hurricane and Arctic Frost and all of it. Go right to it's them, the Smith-Month Act. I have dozens of clips on the news, his surrogate saying it. So obviously somebody in the last 2 days sent this message. Waters said he met with the CIA, the good guys, exposing the CIA. That's never happened before. So this is a bellwether. Tulsi Gabbard's a hero. And I get your point about Susie Wiles. I'm going to give Trump the benefit of the doubt. She helped get him in there. She's a great organizer. I notice when somebody gets attacked, sometimes you need to figure out, is it being cherry picked because they're scared of her because she's effective? The left wanted to kick Musk out. And I talked to sources in the White House, and I asked you about it, and you said, well, that's accurate, but no comment, because you were there. I learned as well that they have the evidence, and now they've had their people go out and say it since we talked last week, of the chips, the cell phone chips in the voting machines, of the fraud out of China into Taiwan, into Venezuela. And I asked you about it. You said, yeah, that's accurate, but I can't comment right now. And that's Susie Wiles running that task force. So that's a good thing. So it's not like I'm just a cheerleader for her. I hope she's for real. But you're saying from your sources, and you were there, that's happening. And then Trump came out yesterday and said, oh, yeah, Kash Patel, we're all on this. It's going to come out soon. Big findings. What's the word on that?
Alex, I think you're right. I guess the greater point I'm trying to make is the reason that they want to move now with their false flag operation, with their efforts to undermine Trump, which began in this outrageous video in which former members of the military urged those in the military to ignore orders from the commander-in-chief that are quote unquote illegal, but not single one of them can point to an illegal, is because we're in a soft period here where the economy is not yet turned around. Yes, food prices are down, but they're not down as low as they were the last year Donald Trump was president. Yes, gas prices are down, but they're not down as far as they were in Donald Trump's first term as president. But they will be. And these tariff deals, which are bringing in massive revenues. Remember, in June was the first time in 15 years that the federal government actually ran a surplus, meaning we took in more.
You got to go. You got to go in a minute and a half. Your producer's telling us. But in closing, what is Trump messaging-wise policy to do to reconnect with the base? Because I don't believe MAGA's dead, but there's been a slide in those voters that weren't Republicans. He's kept his base. The polls show that. But in the ones that put him over the top, he's lost some. What does he do in messaging?
He needs to do several things. One, focus on the domestic economy. Focus on the domestic economy. That's happening, but it's not happening to the full extent that it will. Secondarily, I think he's on the cusp of a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. Of course, the left is saying it's too rough on the Russians, but they want to ignore the entire history and the fact that we agreed not to push Ukraine into NATO, which is what Joe Biden did, which is what caused this war. They hate that narrative, but it's the truth. He needs to end that war. I think that Marco Rubio's doing an exceptional job at that. Thirdly, we must have justice and accountability for those who staged the greatest single coup d'etat attempt in American history, the Russian collusion hoax. He must do those three things. He will do those three things. But those who think Susie Wiles is fighting that, she's the one pushing for the full Maha agenda under Robert Kennedy. She's the one pushing for full disclosure about election integrity, the election machines, the paper ballots. She is the one pushing for the prosecution of the Russian collusion cabal. And this idea that she's going anywhere is completely false. I have total confidence in her because I've known her for 25 years. Donald Trump has total confidence in her as well, and it is well placed. The same people who say that she's responsible for anything they don't like are the same people who said that he would lose the election because she was running his campaign. They are wrong. Thanks, Alex. God bless you.
Roger, StoneZone.com. Thank you so much. Wow, amazing interview.